If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you.
We are part of creating a society of healthy, empowered, and fulfilled individuals. My name is Madeleine Mofjärd, and I'm here to bring you perspective. In this week's episode, I connect with the best-selling author and personal freedom coach, Preston Smiles. I do think that the best way to describe him is as a messenger of love. For what I see, I think Preston is breaking the rules and carving out his own path in this world as a next-generation thought leader. And Preston has been generating millions of views, inspiring people to become more free from the inside and out, which is also what we will be diving into in this conversation. And Preston has also been featured in Forbes, Cosmopolitan, LA Weekly, and many others. He's also appeared on top podcasts such as Lewis House, The School of Greatness, and Impact Theory, where he has shared the arena with names such as Tony Robbins, Joe Dispenza, David Goggins, and Brene Brown, just to name a few of them. And today, well, you can imagine, it's my absolute honor to invite him to the show to share his perspectives on how we can become more free from the inside and out. And in this conversation, you will hear us talk about how to overcome shame and guilt in order to live more fully. We talk about the difference between operating from an energy of proving ourselves and actual aligned inspiration, and how everything that we experience in this given moment is right on purpose. My name is Madeleine Mofjärd, and I'm longing to hear your reflections and insights after listening to this episode. You can find me and connect with me on Instagram at Mofjärd or through the link in the description to this episode. I truly want to invite you to reach out to me and let's keep this conversation flowing. And if you do have friends and people around you that you think would appreciate this conversation, feel free to share this with them or on your story and tag me. And yeah, let's keep this conversation spreading and flowing. Now it's time to kick this off and to invite Preston to this conversation. Hi and welcome, Preston Smiles, to the Perspective Podcast.
Hurrah!
Yes!
Yes.
And not only welcome to this podcast, but also to Sweden.
I feel like Sweden is a second home for me. I have never been, but since I started, and I mean that, 2007 was when I first started getting comments from people from Sweden. So when I used to look at my YouTube analytics, it would be US, UK, Canada, a little bit of Africa, and then Sweden. And I always was like, who's watching from Sweden? I've never been there.
Do you know, do you have contacts here? Do you know people here?
Nope.
Or no? I do believe that Sweden is in one way really far ahead when it comes to the longing to discover, explore, to expand. So maybe it has something to do with that.
Beautiful.
I'm hoping it is.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway, it's lovely to have you here, and I'm so thankful. It feels like a privilege that you're taking the time and blessing me with your time and the audience. And before diving into these juicy topics that we will discover in this conversation, I would really love to hear how it feels to be Preston Smiles today. And maybe if you would like to share it from the perspective of how your heart is doing today.
Beautiful question. Wow. I love that on every level. How it feels to be Preston Smiles today is juicy. It's like sherbet. Rainbow sherbet, swirling like a little miniature tornado. And if I had to put that into regular English, on purpose, I'm experiencing a sharpness and it's like sharp and soft at the same time. So I watched my 4-year-old son, Kingston, this morning. I was sleeping on the floor next to my twins. I have boy-girl twins, Zai and Zahara. And Zai woke up at 4 a.m. screaming. So daddy runs in and rubs him and gets him some milk. And I lay next to him on the floor. And at 5 a.m, Kingston, my 4-year-old, comes in, jumps on top of me and wakes up one of the twins. So I hurry up and I grab them both and I run out and we go on the couch and we're sitting there, and Kingston, my son, looks at Zahara, my only daughter. I have 4 children. Only one is a girl. And he says, "You want to snuggle, Zizi?" And my heart just exploded. Like exploded. Because our house, that's one of the principles and things that we are like fiercely committed to, is having our children operate and move from love, and not by telling them, but by showing them, right? By being the demonstration. There's one thing to conceptually talk about love. There's a whole nother to have that experience daily, to the point where it shows up in everything. The plants in our house, the children in our house, the air in our house is filled with love. And so today I'm feeling sharp and also soft and juicy from the love explosion that occurred this morning.
Wow, what a beautiful answer. I love it. And I can even see the love in your eyes when you're telling that story. It's so beautiful.
Thank you.
And when I was preparing for this conversation, and something that has been alive within me these past couple of days has been like a longing to bring on the humanness within the people that I meet.
Yes.
And when it comes to your name, of course, as everyone know, as you know, you are a name that has, like, you have achieved a lot of success. I think a lot of people have you on this pedestal. You're this man that has achieved a lot of things in this outer world, but also within like your own spiritual world, for what I see and perceive of you. And so when it comes to the humanness and the longing to bring forth that within people, I would like to ask you something that I normally don't ask my guests, but it comes down to, like, is there something within your world right now that feels challenging? Is it something that exactly, you're you're nodding your head. I mean, what is it within your world right now that you are challenged by? What is hard for you right now?
First of all, thank you for asking this, and you're up to something. I would suggest that you do this with all your guests, because it can be very helpful to hear from other people who are experiencing the outer success that other people want, that those people still have stuff that they will be dealing with. So for the last 7 months, I've been in a winter, using the backdrop of the seasons. I've been in a dark winter where I've had to move through some of the worst shame and guilt that I've ever experienced in my entire life. And the byproduct of that was a disconnection from my wife. And we had our son Cassius 8 months ago. And so there's been this, we're in the process of coming back together, but the only way her and I can come back together is if I come back to my own knowingness about the truth of my being. And so all of my life, since I was 13 years old, I've been the man of the house. And what I mean by that is, and children do this, all of us do this, we adapt based on what's occurring in our households. So if your mom or dad are really stressed out, you may become an out of the way kid. If your parents are extremely sad, you may become an entertaining kid. If your parents are dangerous and angry, you may become you may disappear in the house, right? We adapt as children based on the environment that we're growing up in. And my father was experiencing some unresolved trauma that showed up in drug abuse and womanizing and things of that nature. And so by the time I was 13, he had already taken up all the space for somebody who was going to be experiencing their experience. So I made a decision unconsciously that I would never be like him. And therefore, my dad's taken up all the space in the realm of messing up and going through his process. My mom is stressed out based on his stuff and her own stuff. And so what I decided unconsciously was that there was no room for my needs. And so I became the type of kid that had no needs. If my mom tried to give me $5 for lunch, I'd say, no, just give me $2. I never broke a bone. I never hurt myself in any way. And if I did, I never shared it. And the point that I'm trying to point to here is from 13 to 40, I had been operating from that same space, trying to be perfect and get it right to prove that I was better than my dad. And when we are operating from proving energy, yes, you can get far, you can do things. However, there's going to come a point where it's going to break because it's not sustainable. It's not the truth of our being. It's not full alignment. We are threefold beings: body, mind, and soul. When all three are aligned, we are at our most powerful. Well, the proving energy was coming from my mind. My body was having a separate conversation, and my soul knew. The soul always knows what the truth is. And so over from 13 to 40, I had been finding my way back home to the self. And sometimes that occurs voluntarily, and sometimes it occurs through a car crash, if you may. Not an actual car, but like a metaphorical crash. And when we don't listen to that still small voice that is always speaking in untethered soul, Michael Singer calls it the inner critic or the inner roommate. I've named mine P Murder, because when P Murder is talking, when P Murder is in front, he's trying to murder everything. He's judging everybody. He's trying to control absolutely everything. And over the last 7 months, I recognized that everything that I judged my father for, I had done. And so it was like a reckoning where I had to decide what's next. Because the distinction and the difference between somebody who lives an extraordinary life and somebody who lives an ordinary life of quiet desperation is not whether they mess up or not. If you're actually doing life, like for real, you're going to fuck up a whole bunch of things up. The distinction and the thing that makes me extraordinary is not that I walk through life perfect, but how I repair when I do mess things up. Right? Using the analogy of like jumping into a swimming pool. Sometimes, we cannonball into a pool, and that splash doesn't just hit us and get us wet, but it hits other people. And so I had to go and clean up all the water that had splashed on people that I didn't intend for it to splash on. And so I'm coming out of that winter season into a spring, and I'm so grateful for all of it. It's the work that I've been teaching and doing for years, but it gets a little more nuanced the older you get and the deeper you go into your journey.
Yeah. Love to hear that. And first of all, thank you for your courage and vulnerability to share that. And I think it also comes with even a little bit of like a jiggle within me, because I can relate not to the story that you're sharing, but also to like being a voice, a messenger of this work, of working with your own shadow sides, with your traumas, with your like generational stuff that you're carrying on. And being a voice of that comes with like always getting those like tests. Well, maybe you shouldn't see it as tests, but like, opportunities for actually becoming more truthful and like congruent within that mission and message. So it's so profound to hear you share that, and that you're having the courage to openly talk about it makes me super grateful to have you here. And I'm also curious to hear your journey, because you mentioned that it has come with a feeling of shame that you've been carrying. And I'm curious to hear how you have been like working with that feeling of shame within you. Do you have any sort of perspectives on that? How can we meet our own shame and guilt?
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Shame is a gigantic category that could take years of unpacking. It will. However, first of all, let's define shame. So shame, by my definition, is when one believes that they, not the behavior, but they themselves, the person, is fundamentally bad, wrong, dirty, something of that nature. And oftentimes that comes from some type of childhood trauma, whether we're aware of it or not, because before 5 years old, most of us don't have explicit memories. We have implicit memories. We have body memories, but we don't have explicit memories. We don't have procedural, like start to finish memories. We may just have like there's a smell or a feeling, or an uncle comes in the room and your body tenses up. And so what I like to help people understand and what I work from is my understanding of God. And I've explained to clients before that if you see a rainbow and you think to yourself, oh, that's so beautiful. Oh my God. If you see a puppy, a baby puppy, and you go, oh, it's so cute. If you see a baby and you're like, oh my gosh, look at how perfect this being is, then that is the same energy that one gets to point right back at themselves. Because my belief in the entity that some people call God, Jesus, Buddha, Krishna, Allah, source, divine intelligence, my belief is that that thing has never, ever made a mistake. So any leaf that is on a tree outside of your house, or you, the person, none of it is a mistake. If it's here, it's intended here. So I believe that all of us are perfect, whole, and complete, but not finished. We are all unique emanations of the Most High, sent here to reflect and reveal God's love in only the way that we can. That we are, if a snowflake can be, every single snowflake has a perfect pattern that is different than the next one. And each snowflake does what it's supposed to do. It floats and rides the wind as it is supposed to. Wherever it is perfect. So if we assume that if wherever a snowflake is perfect, and the design of that snowflake is perfect, then so is Madeline and so is Preston. That means that no matter what Madeline does or does not do, wherever Madeline is, so is God, and so is perfectness. Going back to the rainbow, going back to the puppy, going back to the baby, all of it is, and that isness can never be wrong, bad, dirty, fill in the blank. Our job as conscious choice makers is to awaken to ourselves in such a way that we can be present to the presence. And the awakening occurs when I have what I've deemed the 7 abundance activators. Number 1, giving out. Right? This is giving out, put a dash next to it. Time, talent, treasures. Right? Giving out of one's time. We can call it giving birth. What are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your talents? Right? I'm going to pause there for a moment. The fruit does not belong to the tree. The fruit belongs to the ecosystem. If the tree tries to hold on to the fruit, the tree will stagnate and die. The blood does not belong to the vessel. It must flow through. And it is the same for each and every one of us. So what are you doing with your talents? That. One of my favorite quotes from the Gnostic Gospels of Thomas reads, if you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you. That is the same thing I just said about the tree, said differently. Treasures. This is when we are tithing and working with the law of circulation. Everything on our planet is always moving, shifting, and changing. And so when we are tuned in to the frequency of tithing, which means 10, giving 10% to where we are spiritually fed, we are in alignment and in the flow of life. Currency? The current must flow. That's number one. Number two is giving away. This is the stuff that we hold on to. A lot of people say, hey, I want this, I want that. Meanwhile, in your closet right now, there are shirts and bags and shoes in your house right now. There are things that don't match what you are calling in. You've been stagnating. You've been holding on to dead energy out of a fear. But that's the very thing that is blocking the abundance coming your way. Number three is giving up. This is where we give up the inner stuff. Right now, all of you, I know it because I know it in myself. All of you have a conversation about yourself. I'm too fat. I'm too tall. I'm too skinny. My boobs sag. I have cellulite. My X, Y, and Z. I'm not lovable. My eyebrows are too thick. My eyebrows are too thin. You name it. You've been holding on to a conversation about who you are. And if you want abundance to flow, truly, you got to give it up. Number four is giving in. This is when we start to surrender. Some of you have plans. You've planned things. It's going to go like this, then I'm going to graduate, and I'm going to meet my man, and then we're going to get married, and then we're going to have kids, and then we're going to travel to Greece, and then we're going to do service work in Africa, and the universe knows your innermost thoughts. When we're so committed and clenching and holding, it's difficult for us to surrender to that which is trying to come forward and come through. Fuck your plans. What does God want from you? What keeps showing up in your sphere? I coach coaches often, and oftentimes they'll say, but I want to coach women who are struggling with ADHD, that X, Y, and Z. And I'll say, well, who shows up? Well, men keep showing up who are struggling. Okay, so what you're saying is God is delivering you a sentient being to support you, not just financially, but to support you in becoming a better coach. And you're saying no to that because you're so stuck on the idea of coaching women, right? This is a very backwards thing that most of us just don't get. So that was number four. Number five is giving thanks. We all know what gratitude can do in our lives. Number six is giving to the self. That's a whole deep can of worms because most people think that giving to the self is I take baths and I do facials and spa days. And not that that's bad or wrong, but there's another level of giving. I'm going to take this deep real quick. And some of you may be triggered, especially if you're in Sweden or European places that may, do you take time to experience the pleasure of sex, the pleasure of masturbation, the pleasure of your own skin, right? Some of you are so concerned and so afraid to ask for what you want that it's the opposite of giving to yourself. You put you last, and then you wonder why you haven't attracted the type of man that you would like to have in your space. It's because you won't do it for you. The universe is one giant mirror. It's only always going to reflect what's going on the inside. And last but not least, number 7 is forgiving. This one's huge. There's a cousin, a sister, a mom, a dad, for sure a mom or a dad. There's someone you haven't forgiven, something you've been holding on to, somebody you've been judging, thinking that you're right about them, thinking you're hurting them by not forgiving. But we don't forgive to excuse some of the behavior. The behavior was terrible. We forgive so that cord, that poison isn't on our hearts. We forgive because what you judge, you will be judged by or one day become. You live long enough, you are going to get your ass handed to you. No matter how much you think you're doing it right and trying to get it right and perfect, you're going to get your ass handed to you. And so we forgive so that we can give grace to other people, knowing that that grace will be returned tenfold to us as well. So those are the 7 abundance.
I love it. I love it so much. Something else that I've heard you talk about, and I think you mentioned that word in this conversation too, is alignment, and how happiness and in the meaning and fulfillment is a product of alignment, or a consequence of alignment. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on that. Like, what do you define as alignment, and how can we show up to create more alignment within our lives?
Yes, there we go. This is beautiful. There's a quote. Happiness cannot be traveled to, earned, owned, worn, or consumed. It's a byproduct of operating from an attitude of gratitude, which is another way of saying operating from alignment. Because alignment, for me, is defined as, first level, accepting what is. Next level, embracing what is. Third level, celebrating what is. The moment we can even, just at the base level, just accept what is, I'm in alignment. How do I know? Because it is. And isness has never made a mistake. There's nothing on our planet that is occurring that is a mistake. Because it's here. So I can argue with what's here, or I can accept what's here. Doesn't mean it's right, but right and wrong are relative and subjective. How many of you, and I hope you do this, had your heart broken and you thought you wouldn't make it out? How many of you have had your heart broken and you thought, I'll never make it out of this? And then you met the next person, and then they broke your heart, or you broke theirs, and you thought you'd never make it out. Then you met the next one. You don't know what the universe is doing. You don't understand. Some of you, you're so controlling that you think it's actually you doing it. There's an orchestration, a divine orchestration that is moving 100 steps ahead of you. And so when we get out of our own way and just accept what is, right? I went through a process of listening a few years ago, and it led me to a place. And then when I got to the place, this voice inside of me said, go back downstairs. And when I went back downstairs, the moment I opened the door, I turned left, I took a few steps, and a woman got hit by a car, and she flew in the air. She landed on her head, and her brains splattered out the back of her head. And I knew in that moment, like instantly, why I was there. There was a doctor and a nurse, a doctor on one side of the street, a nurse on another side of the street. We all ran in. I went to her feet, and I began to go into an altered state and pray with her. Just letting her know that if this is the time that she's going to die, that I'm here, that she's not dying by herself. Her name was Amelia Sturrental. You can look it up online. Amelia Sturrental, New York City, hit by car. She died right there. And at the time I had a little bit of PTSD. And it felt like kind of like a gift, but more like a curse, because I just kept seeing her dying. I just kept seeing the blood gurgling from her mouth and all the things. But as the years go on, I see that that's exactly what I needed to deepen my practice, that it was a gift. And out of 7.7 billion people, somebody was there when Amelia Sturrental was born. There was more than likely a doctor, more than likely a nurse when she was born. More than likely well, of course, her mother was there, right? She had community when she came into the world. And out of 7.7 billion people, I was chosen to be with her when she left the world. That day changed me forever. My reverence for life changed forever watching her die. One more story. I met this girl named Katrina. She's the only other person besides my wife that I thought was the one. Katrina and I were dating. It was magical. It was sexy. It was all the things. She left her boyfriend for me. And then 5 months later, her mom, her sister, and her boyfriend all came back and said, you need to get back with him. She invited me to a park. We climbed up into a tree. She said, I'm going to have to leave you. She gave me a kiss, climbed out of the tree. And to this day, I have not seen her. She blocked me on everything. Everything. And for a year, I was extremely heartbroken. Until it hit me that Katrina was a mirror for me. She was a reminder that I was giving my power away. She was a reminder that I actually really wasn't in love with me. I needed her to validate that I was good enough. And so after that year, I spent 6 months celibacy. No masturbation, no nothing. And I decided that in that 6 months, I was going to fall in love with me. I came out of it. I dated about 3 people. On the 4th person that I dated was a blind date. She got to my door. That morning, I had posted on Instagram, and you can still find this. You'll just have to scroll really far. I posted on Instagram that morning. This is 2014, beginning of 2014. I posted that morning 2 wolves kissing. I actually have the tattoo on my arm right here.
Beautiful.
And I said, I can feel her coming. ... Hashtag wifey. Hashtag the queen is on her way. Because I was calling in my one. I was calling in a wife. So I had a blind date later that night. 6 p.m. My blind date knocks on the door. Her name is Eva. We're still friends to this day. She has a little daughter. It's awesome. And a husband. Eva knocks on my door. I open the door. I instantly know it's not her. So I'm like, this isn't it. I'm gonna cancel this date. But I
delete the post.
Yeah, and I didn't delete the post. But I had been in a prayer class, a power of our prayer. And so what they asked us to do in that class is before we make any decision, just to stop for a moment and ask our guides, God, Spirit, our higher self, am I supposed to do this? So I went upstairs and I went into my room and I said, am I supposed to go on this date? And a voice said, yes. And it was like a not just a voice, but like a body hit too. So I asked again, are you sure? Because I'm asking for my one. That's not it. And the voice came back and said, yes. So I hurry up and get dressed. We get in the car. We had tickets to a show that was across town. And I don't know what the red lights are like in Sweden, but in this particular part of LA on Lincoln Boulevard in Venice Beach, there's a bunch of red lights. And everyone, skirt, 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 the whole way. We're late. And I just hit red light, red light, red light. And at some point, I just stopped and I said, you know what? Something's happening. Right? Because I had just been talking about the day before, all the people that missed their flights during 9/11. All the people who left the World Trade Center to go get breakfast. The people who called in sick from the very floor that the first plane hit, right? Something was happening. It was not their time to go. And so on the 10th red light, I said, you know what? I surrender. Going back to that word, surrender. I surrender control. We get out of the car, we run to the door. They say, oh my God, we're so sorry. We oversold the show by 10 seats. If you want to go in, you will have to stand on the wall. So I look at her and she says, let's go in. So we go in and the guy walks us in and he says, okay, you two sit right here on the wall. And then he takes a few steps and he stops. And it's almost like something hits him. And he turns back around to us and he says, there's crowded. There's a bunch of other people. He just looks at us too and he says, you know what? Come here. I'm going to put 2 extra seats down on the front row. This is an emergency exit. So if something happens, you must pick these seats up and go fast. I said, of course. Thank you so much. So he puts my seat here, puts my date seat there. I look at the stage. I look at my date. Next to her is my wife. And I instantly knew it. I literally instantly knew it. And to make this story even crazier, Alexi she was in London with her boyfriend, a guy she was dating. He missed his flight. He called his friend, Vince, and said, hey, can you pick up my girl from the airport? I missed my flight. Vince and Alexi get in a car together. They spend all day together. Halfway through the day, Vince says, there's a guy I went to college with named Preston. I feel like you're the female version of him. I know you're dating my friend, but I think you two should meet and work together. You both do charity work and all of these things. So Vince, this is 2 months before I meet Alexi. He puts us in a message. He says, hey, P, I'm in London. I know I haven't talked to you in years, but I met this girl and I think you two are going to work together. So I write her. She writes back. I write one more time. She says nothing. Disappears. Right? Cool. All right. I'm calling to my one. This person's in London. Clearly not my wife. Right? Fast forward to that moment. Put the seat down. I look at the stage. I look at my date. And there's Alexi. And I have this moment where I'm like, you have got to be kidding me, God. This is my wife. And make a long story short, she didn't know that she was my wife. So I had to court her and date her and all these things. But I knew it. And eventually she caught on and she broke up with the guy.
But did you know when you saw her there that you had connected, like before that you were connected with her?
Yes.
So you knew that it was Alexis?
Yes.
Okay.
So we looked at each other and she was like, Preston? Yeah. And I was like, Alexi? We'd never met ever, right? Just 2 Facebook messages. That's it.
Yeah. Wow. I
looked at her profile for 5 seconds, 2 messages. That's it. And she was like, what are you doing here? And I was like, what are you doing here? You live in London. She was like, no, I moved to LA. And I'm like, what? And it was like this moment where I was like, shut up, God, let's go. Right. And she was with a guy and I was on a date and my date's in the middle going like this the whole time. And I'm just like, oh my God, I just met my wife. And I was super awkward and I invited her to coffee and she was like, yeah, sure. And on the first coffee date, it was supposed to be 45 minutes in her phone. She put 45 minutes. 4 hours later, it turned into this beautiful moment where we both knew. We both knew. And I share all of that to share that's not unique to me. All of you, everybody listening, everybody watching, every human, every being on the planet has a voice that's always speaking. Oftentimes there's so much other things in the way that it's hard to hear that voice, but that voice never stops. And it's the truth of our being, and it will never guide you to anywhere that you're not supposed to be. And so I challenge each and every one of you to do your best just today to surrender to that voice. There'll be a moment at the coffee shop. There'll be a moment when you're standing in front of your best friend where the voice says, hug her. The voice will say, compliment this person. The voice will say, give them an extra tip. You won't know why, but you're being used. Your job is to be used. Your job is to get out of the way and be used.
I love that so much. And it also sends me to this quote that I've heard you say in many other interviews and talks and texts and everything, that we need to slow down to the speed of wisdom. And I think it connects so beautifully to your story, that like if you weren't connected and if you hadn't gone upstairs and like slowed down to the speed of wisdom, you wouldn't probably never had gotten that connection with Alexis. And it's so beautiful.
Yeah. 1,000%.
Thank you for sharing. That's so beautiful. I'm noticing that time is running fast and we are about to wrap this conversation up. And before I let you go, I would love to hear, like, if you got the opportunity to reach the whole world, like everyone would listen and it's Preston Smiles talking, what would your message be to the world?
I'd start by saying, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being here during this time in human history. Then I'd remind them that whatever they're being with is just like all of nature, like every storm. There's not a storm on the planet that lasts forever. Then I would ask them to turn to a neighbor, breathe deep into the bottom of their belly, softening their gaze, but looking into that person's eyes, and to repeat after me. And then I'd say, I see you. And then the crowd would say, I see you. I see you, you sexy beast. And then the crowd to each other would say, I see you, you sexy beast. And then they'd all smile. I see your joy. I see your joy. I see your pain. I see your pain. But most importantly, I see your genius. I see your magic. You are amazing. And then I'd ask those beings to hug each other for the remainder of the time. That'd be it.
Wow. Wow. Thank you. That's so beautiful. And Preston, for the ones who want to get in contact with you and see more of your work and get in contact with you, where can they reach you?
At Preston Smiles on everything, YouTube, Instagram, but PrestonSmiles.com. I have some pretty amazing programs. One in particular called Stretch 22, where I help people unlock themselves in ways that they didn't know were possible. Help people move through some of the trauma and the wounds that have occurred in their lives so they experience levels of joy and freedom and connectedness like they have not since they were children. And so if anybody's really interested or excited to do something like that, definitely hit me up, PrestonSmiles.com/stretch-22. Go there. It's very affordable as well.
Yes. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you so much for showing up here in this space with me and for being in your truth and in your vulnerability, in your courage, in your essence. Thank you for being you.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. It's really good to see you.
Thank you for tuning in with us today, for sharing this space with us, and for having the courage to show up for you becoming the highest version of you. I am so curious to hear your reflections, insights, and maybe even triggers. What came alive within you while listening to this conversation? My name is Madeleine Mofjärd, and I invite you to connect with me on Instagram at Mofjärd, or you can find me through the links in the description to this episode. I would love for this conversation to keep flowing. Again, thank you for being here in this space with us.